and welcome to another edition of Old Irix Tutorials. In today's episode, we're diving into Alias's Power Animator, and we're going to run it through the basic paces and see what it can do. This version of Power Animator is version 9. It was the last version of Power Animator. I think after version 9, like if it's Alias 10 and beyond, I don't think that's an addition of Power Animator anymore. So this was the very last hurrah of Power Animator. Okay, if you use Maya regularly, you'll recognize some processes in here that have carried over into Maya. There'll be a little bit of a legacy feel here. So when you first open up Power Animator, you'll see here you have this palette on the left. It's some tools. There's some that are collapsed. These little tabs here can be collapsed. So you have this pick, you can click it, click them. You can see they'll collapse down, and you can kind of get through the whole menu here. So you got pick, transform, there's curves. What else do we use? Edit. Probably not curve edit, probably objects, object creation. And that's the palette. This is a way to get some tools here. There's a shelf here, just like the Maya shelf. There's some tools collected, some curves, some surfacing tools, which are the object creations. Some editing tools, which we'll use. Some rendering buttons and some get information buttons here. Let's see. Let's start here. So when you first open this up, you can see there's just gray. And what you want to do is, in order to get the 4 views, you just start a file, go File, New, up here in the upper left, and you'll get the traditional 4 window that is common in most 3D applications. You have your perspective on the upper right, top view on the upper left, front view on the lower left, and right view on the lower right. First thing that I always want to cover in all of my tutorials is it's two tiers. There's basically three big things that you do, but the first 2 are how to navigate the 3D views, how to get around those, like panning them and zooming and rotating through them, and then then it's about object creation. And once you have objects, then you need to manipulate them. So that's like the move, rotate, and scale tools. And so we'll go through each item one at a time here. So let's start with the 3D navigation. And so I'll start with the perspective window here, which is up on the upper right. If you want to move around this viewport, it's close to like Maya, but it's just a little different. In Maya, you use the Alt in combination with the mouse buttons, and in Power Animator, you use the Alt and Shift. And when you press the Alt and Shift, you'll see this little, it says Viewing Panel come up here, and it's got bookmarks and things so you can save positions, probably similar to Softimage. I don't really use it that much though. But we'll do that Alt Shift, and then when you hit left click, you'll get the orbit. So you can see here I can use the left click and I can orbit around a center point there. It's like rotation. And if you use the Alt Shift and the middle mouse click, it's like move. That's easy to remember. The middle with the M is like moving. It's like panning. And the Alt Shift plus the right is it's a zoom. You call this a zoom, but it's not really zooming the lens. It is dollying the camera forward and back. And that's how you get in and out, pushing in and pushing out of the view here. And then on the orthographic views, the top, front, and right, you can use the Alt Shift with the middle and now Alt Shift with the right. The left doesn't get you much. You can only, it says right here when you do it, you can only tumble in a perspective view. So you got the middle mouse to move these views around, and the right to zoom them in and out. You can see the grid changing the scale as you zoom them in and out. And so that's your 3D navigation. And then we'll want to get into moving items. But first we want to create some items in order to get into that. And so first thing that we'll do is we'll go into the tool palette here, and if we go down here, you'll see there's object creation. And one of the things that you can do as you go through these menus is you see some of them have in the upper right corner, they have these little yellow arrows. And if we go to objects, we're going to create objects. You got text here, and it looks like this sphere. If you click and hold on one of the buttons that has an arrow in the upper right, you'll see that it expands the menu out. So I'll click and hold, and you can see here now I have all these other options underneath here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create this plane. So I'll move over here and click it, and it changes that, and it's highlighted in red, meaning the tool is activated. And up here, you can see here that this message line here is telling you enter new plane position. And so I'm just going to click in the top view, and it starts to lay down a little square plane there. Now you can use the manipulator. When you first create an item, it puts the little manipulator on there so you can move it around or use it to scale or possibly rotate. So you got the little rotate there and the scale, and you mess with it like that. And if you click off of it, it won't deselect like in my. If you click off it just creates another item, and it'll keep doing that until you every time you click until you change the mode. And if we go up here to the top, there are two modes here. There is pick object or pick nothing. So I'll pick nothing, and that ends the tool. And it basically starts the pick nothing tool, and now we have nothing selected. And we'll do this one here, which is pick object. And we'll go through and we'll get rid of these ones we don't need. As we select them, though, you'll see here you have this left, middle, right, all the messages up here while this pick is on it. So it says use mouse to enter name or item to pick, unpick. Left toggle, middle replace, right remove. So we can left to, pick them, toggle them, like clicking the left. You don't even have to hold shift like in my, you're just basically clicking. It's in a selection mode here. Middle mouse is replace. So if I just want to deselect all those and select this one, middle mouse, it'll select that and remove those. And right is just move and remove in general. So whether you're toggling it on or off, you just press the right key, right click, it'll remove those things from your selection. So I'm going to get rid of all these by left clicking through them and leaving one, and then we'll hit delete. And there we go, we're left with one. I'll pick this one here. And then we're going to go to the move, rotate, and scale. And the first thing we'll do here is we'll use this transform. And then I'll show you, instead of using these menus, I'm going to show you how to use the marking menus, which is something I showed in the second my tutorial about the marking menu process. In Power Animator / Alias Studio still uses this to this day, is the marking menu system is a faster way of getting around than using these. Now, that being said, I do want to look into maybe creating hotkeys for the move, rotate, and scale to see if I can get it to act similar to Maya. We'll try that in a moment. So here I'm going to go over here to the move tool. We'll hit that, and we'll move this guy into position, into the middle here. And then what do we got here? We have the rotate and we have the scale. And there's there's a uniform scale, and then like scaling it separately so you can go different directions at once instead of a uniform scale. I'm going to use the uniform scale, and we'll start scaling this guy up quite a ways. And then that's out. Now I'm going to use the Alt+Shift to right click out so we can see everything. And move this around. We have that. Okay, now we want to deselect. Now this is where I'm going to show you how to use the marking menu. So instead of using this to deselect up here, the pick no object, I'm going to show you the marking menus. The marking menus are the Control and Shift combined with left, middle, or right mouse button. And if we start with the Control Shift left, you'll see here that it gives you the pick. So pick component, pick nothing, pick object, pick the point type. So like the CV controls and everything is like components. So like, let's say we'll pick nothing, and you can see it just does it really quick. And then we can go pick object, and I can click that. And then let's say we wanted to move it. Instead of going up here to the move, we can go Control Shift instead of Alt Shift. Control Shift, middle mouse click, and now you got transform, move, scale, rotate, and non-uniform scale. And so now that's a faster way. So now we can go to scale. We can scale that up and down. Again, I can go, Control Shift middle, and I can go to move, and I can move it. You can see that just a lot less than moving up here and doing that. So then pick nothing. Okay, so that Control Shift with left to pick things and Control Shift middle to set the transforms is a lot faster way of getting around. So we'll do that more often than you'll see me press the buttons over here. That being said, we'll go back down here to the create objects, and we're going to get a few things. So we'll click left hold left click down on the item again, and let's grab a sphere. I'll just click a single sphere into the scene here, and then I'll use that Control Shift left click for nothing, and then we'll go over here and click and hold, and let's do a cube. Put a cube in there, click and hold, and we'll put a torus in here. And we'll have those three items, Control Shift middle. Oh yeah, we want to move these things up on the floor. So here's another trick that's kind of like the focus in my. If you hold the Alt and press L and click in the scene, you'll see that it focuses in on it. Oops, didn't mean to do that. I clicked the torus without deselecting. So Control Shift middle, or Control Shift left, pick nothing. So we're on that. I pick this up. It's still creating that. Pick object. Yeah, pick object. So I'm going to delete that torus, and I'm going to delete this torus. Okay, yes. Oh, I've deleted them both. Okay, so I'm going to click the torus again, put one in the scene, Control Shift, pick object. Okay, so now we can toggle that off. All right, now let's select all three of these, and I'm going to hit that Alt+L up here in this view. See, and then I'll click this one, Alt+L. Click this one, Alt+L, click this one, Alt+L. And it allows me to basically zoom in on these items, but it's like pressing the F in Maya. And now Control Shift middle, and we'll use the move key, and we'll move these one at a time up on the floor here. I'll move this view down. Let's see here. Let's get the torus, not the plane, like that. Move this up here. Grab the sphere, move this up on the floor. We'll put them closer together. Put that one closer together. I'm just using the move tool, clicking through. And now we want to do Control Shift middle click, and we'll use rotate. And I want to rotate the sphere, or rotate the torus up here, and then Control Shift middle scale, and we'll scale that up. And also the sphere I want to scale up a little bit. Control Shift middle, move, start moving that up on the floor here. That looks pretty good. Okay, now we have these three items. Alt Shift, rotate, middle mouse, right click, just to get around the scene here. Got a neat little group of items. And now let's look at this out of wireframe. So I have this in wireframe, and we're going to go up here to display toggles. There's object display. Next to it is this display TGLS, which is the toggles, and we'll press the shaded mode, and it gives us this scene in blue. Everything's blue here. The default shader in Power Animator has everything as like a Lambert blue, diffuse blue. And what we want to do is we'll save this, because we have a nice save little basic scene here. So we'll save this, and we'll put it as basic _ 001. And we'll go over here to the right and say save wire. So now we've got this kind of put in save, so we have it. And what I want to do is I'm going to switch the views here. So we have all four, and just like in Soptimage, you can see in the upper right corner here, there's this little square with a smaller square in it. If you left click on that, it'll make it the one that you click take the whole screen, and you can see it's got a little black there. And then you can click it again, it'll go back. So you can switch views like that and make them the full size view. You can also, if you want, just grab the little arrow here on the lower left of any of these views. Oh, we didn't get it here. Control Shift left, nothing. I can grab this little corner here. You can see I can just kind of arbitrarily pull it out. These are all individual windows here, so I can just make it whatever size I want. And I do that for rendering tests sometimes. I'll just put it back where it was here. So I'll put this big so we can kind of look around the scene here. And what I want to do is I want to look at this in gray, and we'll do a generic render before we start changing the shaders. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the windows, and there down here there's a thing called multi-lister, and we'll just list all, and it brings up this thing that's kind of like what later becomes the hyper shade, although we don't have a networking connections view here, but we have this environment, we have the default shader, we have this light, which is an ambient light. It's not labeled that and we have this default directional light. You can see here this is like directional, and this is ambient light. And the first thing we do is I'm going to go into the ambient light and double click, and it brings up its attribute editor. And I'm going to do the common parameters here, and you can see this has an intensity of 1 and a light radius of 1 here. Let's say ambient parameters, an ambient shade of 0.5. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because sometimes you'll try to start lighting a scene in Power Animator, and you press render, and it'll just seem like you almost don't have any shadows. It's because this intensity is really high at the beginning. So I'm going to take this 1 and I'm going to make it a 0.1. And you can see it goes down quite a bit. And now we'll get more defined shadows. Now we'll put this back here, and I'm going to take this default shader. I'm going to double click it, and we get the the attribute for that. You can see it's a Lambert. It says default shader, diffuse at 0.8. I'm going to go down to the color, and we'll just make that gray. I'm just going to move this over to the white, and then move that pure white, kind of the middle gray, maybe light gray here. And then we'll do a render test. Now the scene comes with this directional light, and I think the angle we're looking at, if I go back to display model, display toggles, shade. Oh, yeah, okay, that seems to work here. Okay, so I'm turning off the shade. Although I don't see, now I don't see the, oh, I gotta turn the wireframe on. Okay, the model is the wireframe. Okay, so the light is going away from us here in the perspective view, so I want to, now that I want to select it, which I think I do have it selected, or let's see, Ctrl+Shift left, we'll pick nothing, yeah, so I'll click it, so now I've got the light selected, and we'll go Ctrl+Shift middle, and we'll do rotate, and I think we're going to try to left or middle mouse is that on Y? Yeah. So I'm turning it more this direction down, so it's going, the shadow will be this way. And let's double click this light and see if it has a shadow on here. So we have active effects, light is on, but none of the lights have shadows on by default, so we have to switch over here and we'll flip the shadow on. We'll turn that off, and we'll turn this off, turn off the multi-lister. We'll open up this whole window here. Let's go under the render tab, and we'll go into the globals. And I think the medium's okay. Adaptive minimum, I'll do 1 to 4. Curve threshold, let's see. Oh, anti-aliasing, I go 2. That's the subdivisions. Anti-aliasing, I'm going to do 1 to 4. Threshold 0.7. These are all fine. So this is all defaults are pretty close to being fine. So what we're going to do, turn on the display shade, and we will go to render. And we'll do direct render. Direct render is whatever window you have selected. When you press direct render, it's going to render in that window. But I'm going to hit the option box over here on the right just to see what we have. We have Raycaster. I'm going to do Ray Tracer. And we'll hit go. And it's going to try to draw us a frame. And it shouldn't take that long. Because I turned the anti-aliasing up from 0, it's probably taking a little longer than it should. But there's our gray shaded. Oh, you can't see the top of the box because it has the same gray shade as the floor. Well, but you can see here it's going to put some shadows here, and they're, because it's a distant light, they're always going to be sharp. So it's just literally like a Cucaloris is like a cutout shadow. And what we'll do is we're going to switch that to a different, we're going to switch this over to a light that gives us soft shadow. Now, before I get any further, I will say that normally you see me light these kind of scenes in like Maya or soft images. You see me use an area light because the bigger that the square is on the area light, the softer the shadow is. It has a really nice fall off, and it tends to look more photoreal and natural. The problem is that in Power Animator, the area light does give us a soft shadow, but it also gives us this massive specular hit, which isn't very, it doesn't look right. It just looks wrong. So even though there are area lights in this, they produce a weird speck highlight that kind of ruins the render, in my opinion. So I'm going to do Shift middle move, and when we're in the perspective view, actually you can move based on the without having the gimbal like you would in Maya, where you actually control the gimbal. You can use the mouse button, so you're moving on X, Y, or Z, and you can see here X is on this plane, Y isn't up like it is in Maya, it's the back and forth, and Z is up and down. So if I use the left as I'm moving this, it should move left and right, so it's constrained to left and right. If I use the Y, it's going to move, the middle mouse is the Y because this is X, Y, it'll move forward and back on this one, it's constrained, and if I use the Z, it moves forward and back on that. So you can see here that allows me to do some manipulating here without having to actually grab a gimbal. That's kind of neat. And we will, let's start putting shaders on these. Okay, let's go back to the multi-lister. Windows, multi-lister, list all. What we're going to do is we're going to default shader. And I'm going to go edit, new shader. And there's our new shader. We're going to double click it. And we'll call this one, let's do green underscore shiny. Enter, and we're going to switch it from a Lambert over to a Fong. You see it puts that little highlight there, and we want the color to be green, so let's go over here to green, and we'll move the red and the blue down, and we'll move the green not all the way up, somewhere where it's kind of the fall off's kind of nice. It looks pretty good. And then I have the specular. I want the shininess to be very high. You notice when you move the shininess, that highlight gets really small, and we want it, this menu maxes out, the slider maxes out at 100, but I'm going to go over here and I'm going to select that. I'm going to go 1000, and it's going to really tighten that. It's going to go super shiny. And we have reflectivity at 0.5, which I just leave, and then there's the specular. Now I would have wanted, so later in future of CGI, you could have specular all the way down and have reflectivity, and it would still have reflectivity. That might work on the blend shader, I don't know, but we'll here I just turn the specular up to the shininess up to 1000, and then this reflectivity, because if you have the specular colored down to black, it just takes away all the reflectivity. So whether this is 0.5 or not, if that specular isn't there, it doesn't reflect, so I leave that there. And I will pull the specular down a little bit, so it's not too reflective. Then we will duplicate this, and since we already have it where we like, we'll go edit, copy, and we've got a green shiny 2, and instead we'll just call it red. Red underscore shiny. Hit enter, and now you've kind of you have the same settings. So now I can go back down to green and just switch this over to red, and we're already there. So we've made a copy. It has all the shiny and reflectivity attributes as the first one. So we made a duplicate, and we just made it red. And we have the red one. Now let's do edit, copy, and we'll also make a blue one here. Go blue shiny, and the same thing, grab this guy here, go over to blue, pull this down, that's the blue, we'll brighten that up a little bit. Matter of fact, I can pull it out of direct blue and kind of make it a little bit of a lighter blue just for fun. Okay, we have these shaders here, and what I'm going to do, let's make a new one, edit new shader, and we'll call that one just the floor, F-L-O-R. Okay. Alright, so what we want is, let's color these. What you can do, let's turn this down a little bit back here, is, let's see, we want to grab the sphere, and we will make that one green. So I'll hit the green shiny with that sphere selected. We'll go down here to the lower right, it says shading, assign shader. You go to the cube, hit the red, assign the red, hit the torus, hit the blue shader, shading, assign shader blue, and then I'll hit the floor shader, shading, assign shader. Alright, let's see, what else can we do before we move on to, let's make the floor checkered. So I'll double click the floor shader, And here in the color, we got this map. This is very similar to Maya, where they had the little checker icon here. It's basically the map. You can click this, and it's going to bring up this little procedural window, which, if you're familiar with Maya, you'd be surprised to find out that this is still fairly much the same as it was way before Maya. So you'll see these same bulge, cloth, fractal grid, noise, mountain ramp. If you've used Maya at all, you'll recognize these, and you'll realize how old some of these procedurals are. You might even wonder why they had never been updated in 20-something years. But let's press on the checker, and there it places it. And we've got a nice checker pattern across our surface there. Let's see here, surface placement. And I'm going to go to surface placement here because I kind of want there to be more stuff. So let's see here. It says U repeat, V repeat is 4. So let's see if we make that 5. Yeah. V repeat 5. Let's see, that's kind of neat. And that's about right, yeah. And what I'm also going to do is, instead of leaving this pure black, because we're going to have shadows that are black, maybe they'll be up from black because of the ambient light, I'm going to lift this black color so that we can still see some contrast from the shadows. So we'll be able to appreciate the shadows over the black squares here. So there we have the floor, and we have our 3 shiny shaders here. But before we do some renders, I'm going to pull this up here. I'm going to do a modeling function. I want to make this cube here. I want to make this round, like as if I beveled it. And if we go down here to surfaces, on the right column, the third one down, there's the little arrow again. We'll click that, and there, over here on the far right, is this thing called it's the rounder tool. And what I want to do is, it's asking me to select a pair of surface edges, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this one, and you'll see this little white line. And you can, if you're in shaded mode, you won't understand it. So let's go back to display toggles. We'll turn off shade. You can see here it's doing this maneuver here with this roundness. It's taking it all the way to the edge, and it says 1, and it's got this edge highlighted here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to try to grab that 1 by, no, see, I did it wrong here. And I'm going to undo all. And I'm going to do shift right click, pick nothing. Okay, so click this guy. Shift right click, pick nothing. Okay, so click this guy, and then I'm going to try to grab that number. There we go. And you can see I'm going to pull this down here, and until I get a profile, you can see that that's what it's going to do there. It says it's looking across here, and it's going to take this whole bar here, and it's going to give it that profile. And you can see here, because I've clicked an edge, it added another one, which we want to do eventually, but we don't want to do that yet. So I'm going to click this, try not to click on one of the edges, and drag until it's about 0.2. And now that I have one set at 0.2, if I click on any other edge, it'll be the exact same number that I set here. So let's see if I click this one. See, it's the 0.202, 0.202, 0.202. And we'll go around and try to do all the edges here. And I'll do the bottom edges here. And what we're doing is we're tagging each of the edges at how much. As you can see, you could individually set the size, but I'm trying to keep it uniform by just setting it the first time and clicking all of them. Once all those are chosen, you can go down here, and there's this little menu down here. I'm going to press build. And it goes through, and it tries to build the thing, and there it does. It makes this nice rounded cube. And we'll go back to the display toggles. We'll press shade. So there's our new surface, and it's, since they're all the same, it's very uniform. It's a very uniform rounded cube. And I am going to Ctrl+Shift, middle mouse, no, Ctrl+Shift, pick nothing, and then I'll pick that. And I try to do it saying a surface selected, building with this edge will cause the previous construction to be lost. So I'll hit OK, which we don't want to do here. So let's say Control, pick nothing. Okay, so let's get into Control+Shift, pick object, I want to pick this new group, the round group here. And we want to go and assign our shader to this. So let's go back to our list all. Got the red shader, and I'll assign shaders. And now we've got the whole cube rounded off. Let's see, you can pick Ctrl+Shift, pick nothing. So there we have 3 items. But if we render, it's just going to be a hard shadow. So this is the part where we want to change something. So we'll go back to our Windows, multi-lister, list all, and we're going to take, we're going to get rid of this light too, but we're going to go edit, new light. And so now there's this new light here, and I'm going to go to this light. I'm going to press delete, and now we've got a light 3, and I'm going to double click that. It's a point light right now, but I'm going to switch it over to a spotlight. And what else do we have on the spot? We want to turn the shadows on. And the one thing we can do down here with the shadow parameters is that we can do ray trace soft shadows. I'm going to press the soft shadows. And let's see, shadow map. I don't know if we want to do shadow map. I'll do shadow samples at, let's see, 8. Try 8 first. It may not be shadow casting. This looks pretty good. And what else do we want to do? We want to turn out the spot parameters. We want to have a little bit of drop off. Do like a 0.1, and the penumbra at 1. Yeah, and I'll take the spread, and you'll see here if I close this, here's this spotlight. Look in that direction, and I want to spread it. Just spread it. You'll see it's widening the spotlight here. And what we want to do is, let's go back to display toggles, but turn off shade because we want to see which way it's facing. Ctrl+Shift middle, use rotate, and I want to do it on the Y plane, so I'll use the middle mouse. You can see here it's turning it like that. But what we really want is, do we want the Z plane? Yeah, use a Z. And because Z's up and down. And so now we have it facing this direction. Alt-Shift right to zoom out, and then I'm going to do a Ctrl+Shift+M for the move tool, and we'll move this up here of the plane. And what's our intensity? Our intensity is 1. I'm going to turn this up to 10. And we'll see what we get here. We'll open this up, and we will do a test render. I'm going to go to render, and we'll do a direct render, and we'll take a look at it once it's ready. Okay, this render's coming to a close here, and it looks pretty good. In the camera, it looks a little bit more blown out than I'm actually seeing in person here. This, probably in the video, this looks a little flat, but it is really, there's a nicer fall off here than the video camera is actually capturing here. This is actually pretty smooth. The one thing you don't see, you have this tiny, I don't know if you can see in the video, but there's a tiny little highlight here, a tiny little single pixel there, and then on the torus you can see a couple little highlights there, and that is because the specularity is really tight, and it's getting a specular hit from this spotlight, but we're going to create a proper reflector card like I do in most of my videos, so that there's a physical representation of this kind of light in the scene here. So I'm going to close this up, and we will minimize that, and we'll go and create a reflector card. So I'm going to go up here to the objects, hold down that torus to get our little plane, click a little plane, and then Ctrl+Shift left click, so pick nothing. And let's go to our Windows multi-lister list all, and we'll say new edit, new shader, double click, and under Lambert we're going to move it to light source, and we'll just turn the color up to white, and just call this light card. Now we have that, and we want to put the light card on this one, so Ctrl+Shift left, pick object, so I'm going to click that here. That's selected with the shader selected, shader assign shader, and if we go to display toggle shade, there we go, you have a little little card, and I'm going to go Ctrl+Shift+M, middle mouse to move, and we'll put this up here. Alt+Shift+M to move the view, and then we'll continue dragging this guy. Ctrl+Shift+M to get into rotate, and if I hold left click it should rotate on the X, which it's doing. Oops. Flatten that out, and let's see, Alt+Shift middle drag, see where we are. Oh, we're pretty close here. And let's see, it's on rotate mode right now, and then Ctrl+Shift+M to move, and we'll move you over here, get you behind it, and then Ctrl+Shift+M to scale, and we should be able to just take that up quite a bit, give us a highlight, and that would give us a really pretty render. Now, we didn't have enough samples on the light, so I'm going to go here. We'll go back to the Windows multi-list or list all. I'll go back to the spotlight. I'll turn that intensity down to 8 since it was pretty bright. I didn't see the edge of the penumbra, so I'm actually going to bring the light in a little bit here. On the spread, I'm going to bring it back to like 88. Maybe we'll get some fall off in the middle here. And what else? We said shadow. So shadow samples, I'm going to put this up to 16. And shadow casting 1024. Edge quality 3. Okay. And we'll file save. And we'll try to give this one more render. I'm going to kind of Alt-Shift right. I'm going to zoom in on our primary focus here, and what else I'm going to do? Hold on, I'm going to pull down the multi-list or list. I'm going to pull down the ambient light just a little bit more. Double click that guy. Ambient shade. I'm going to put that 0.2. See if that takes it down a bit. And there we go. File save, and then I'll do another render here. And we'll go direct render, and I'll show it more when it's finished. Okay, that render is finished, and it looks pretty snazzy. Although you probably can't see it still. There's a nicer highlight here. There's the, I don't know if you can see it in the video here. I can't see it in the preview. Maybe you'll be able to see it in the final. There's a nice, the light card is here, and you can see it across the torus here. Shadows are nicer. The shadows putting it darker than the black squares, and yet the ambient's still lighting it up enough that you can still see some detail in the shadow instead of it being pitch black. And that's a good first run here in Power Animator for a good basics tutorial. And we'll try to do, I'll do a second one for modeling a mouse with NURB surfaces here in a moment. Before we go, I wanted to test to see if I can create hotkeys. So I'm going to open this up here, and I want to do, I want to see if I can set the hotkeys to be like Maya. So we're going to go to Windows, or go to Preferences, Interface, Hotkeys menu. And we'll pass the menu, palette. So yeah, pick an X form. We might want to do this here. Nothing object. How about we do object? I'll go Shift Q. Let's see if I can do a Shift plus Q. And Control Q for nothing, object Shift Q. And then I'm going to try to go down to transform. I got the WER, which I tried to set in a previous chance. I'm going to do Shift plus W. And we'll do, see if I can do Shift plus E. And Shift plus R. And now this attempt is to try to make apply, and the attempt here is to see if I can do, let's see, is it Control? Let's see if this actually activates here. So Control Q, And then Shift Q. Oh yeah, so now I can do picking things, unpicking things. Okay, let's pick, and now, yeah, round group, here, toggle. Okay, that's working. Now if I go Shift W, oh yeah. Now I can like this and like this. Here, click this guy, like this and like this. Shift E for rotation. Yeah, that's working. And Shift R for scale. Yeah, that's a lot better. And then we go Control Q for nothing and Shift Q for pick. So that does work. And boy, do I like that a lot, because that makes it a little bit more like Maya. So let's see here. I'll pick this with the middle mouse, hit Shift W, and now I'm in the move mode. Yeah, and I can move that around. Okay, so that's using those hotkeys. You can switch some stuff around to make it closer to Maya. Control Q. And yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. So we know that we can set hotkeys and make those instead of having to. If you want to use these marking menus, you can, but then you can also set the hotkeys, WER, Shift WER, to make this like closer to Maya. All right, that's a good step. Thanks for tuning in.